Lions are coming off of a very, very good regular season in the 2024 season. Unfortunately, ended in disappointing fashion when they lost to the Commanders in the divisional round, but their first playoff game. And now they're going into a little bit of an interesting season. They lose their offensive coordinator, they lose their defensive coordinator, and they also have some pieces they lost as well. So it'll be interesting to see, can the Lions bounce back? Can the Lions bounce back from that disappointing loss in the playoffs last year to try and make another playoff push to potentially get back to that NFC Championship game that they were at in 2023 and maybe get to the Super Bowl this time around. Welcome back to Couch Casual. Today, we are going to be previewing the Detroit Lions for the 2025 NFL season. First, looking at the additions and losses that the Lions had this offseason. Similar to the Ravens that we did last episode, not a ton of changes. When it's a really good team, you're not going to make a lot of changes. Their changes is more in the coaching staff. So first, they bring in 3 rookies. 2 of them, I think, will get a decent amount of playing time. The other one, not too sure. First, they bring in Tate Ratledge, who was a consistent 3-year starter at Georgia. Very safe floor. Like, you know what you're going to get out of Tate Ratledge. He may not have the highest ceiling, but he's a safe pick and got a lot of strength too. And when you're a 3-year starter at Georgia, I think I can rely on you to be a good player. They bring in Isaac Tesla from Arkansas, big receiver. He had a very good Senior Bowl, which definitely caused his draft stock to rise. Good ball skills, not super productive at Arkansas, but he's shown. I think he's had a good camp, and he's already shown a lot in the preseason so far, in the Hall of Fame game as well. So I like Tesla. Again, don't know how much he's going to play compared to Ratledge and Tyleik Williams, their first-round pick from Ohio State, who's a physically dominant D tackle, can take up a lot of space, especially in the run game. I think that's going to be his strength in the NFL is his run defense. So I think it's a good pick. And when you look at some of the guys they lost, they lose Kevin Zeitler, who is one of the better guards in the league. You replace him with Tate Ratledge. Tate Ratledge is not going to replace Kevin Zeitler. But again, I think he can be a good NFL player right away and not make the loss of Kevin Zeitler as bad as it may seem. They also bring in DJ Reed from the Jets. Overall, he's a good, solid corner in both the run and the pass. And they lose Carlton Davis, who is another good overall good corner. I would say he maybe is slightly better than DJ Reed, but not by much. And they signed DJ Reed for $2 million a year less. So I think they kind of balance each other off, and they're just rotating corners with that move. They also lose in the secondary Ifeatu Melifonwu, who he had himself a very good 2023 when he was actually somewhat healthy. He just really hasn't been healthy so far in his career. And if you're looking at losses from last season, they didn't really lose him. As an overall player, I think it's a decent loss because I think he can be good if he is healthy. He just needs to get healthy. They also lose Darius Smith, who once he got there, he only played about 8 games, but he did have 4 sacks, and it was overall pretty solid for them. So that's a big loss. But again, when you bring Aiden Hutchinson back, it kind of balance things out. And then their biggest loss, which I think could have a massive impact on this team, more than I think people are talking about, is Frank Ragnow. He's been there for so long, been so good for the Lions for so long. And again, just like Zeitler is one of the better guards in the league, Frank Ragnow is one of the better centers in the league. And losing him is definitely going to hurt this offense because they brought in Ratledge to replace Zeitler. They didn't really bring anybody to replace Frank Ragnow. So that's going to be tough. We'll see what happens there. I do think overall they got slightly worse this offseason, losing a guy like Zadarius Smith, losing the 2 linemen. And again, Reed and Carlton Davis are kind of a net neutral. I don't know. It's kind of they just swapped players, very similar. So overall, and then when you add on losing Ben Johnson and Aaron Glenn, I don't think it was the best offseason for the Lions. Again, I still think they'll have a good year because they still have so much talent, first of all, on this offense. Now, when looking at this Lions offense, their O-line last year, again, was top 10 in sacks allowed, like fewest sacks allowed. They allowed the 9th fewest sacks. But again, they took a lot of hits. Obviously, Penei Sewell, you don't have to worry about Penei Sewell. Penei Sewell not only is one of the best tackles in the league, he's one of the best linemen in the league. He's also one of the better overall players in the league. So you're completely set at right tackle with Penei Sewell. Don't have to worry a thing about him. And that's kind of why I like that Tate Ratledge is their right guard, because he gets to play next to one of the best linemen in football. You have Graham Glasgow, who had an up and down 2024, but I think he has been good. Like he can play good. He just got to be more consistent. Mahogany is an inexperienced 6th-round pick in 2024. So I don't know how to feel about Christian Mahogany, throwing him out there in the fire to replace, because I think Graham Glasgow might have been a guard. So it might have been Glasgow at guard with Zeitler, and then Ragnow as the center. And now it's Graham Glasgow at center, Mahogany and Ratledge at guard. So you're throwing a guy like Mahogany sort of in the fire there as that starting left guard. Taylor Decker is a solid tackle. So your tackles are set. It's more that interior of the O-line that is the question mark for the Lions. And then when you look at their quarterback, Jared Goff, now Jared Goff, he's not going to do the flashiest things, obviously, but he's going to execute the offense very well and very consistently and very efficiently. Had 4,600 yards, 37 touchdowns, 12 interceptions last year. You know, it felt like half of those came against the Texans that one game, but he had that one game against the Seahawks where he didn't throw an incompletion. He is a very good quarterback, top 10, borderline top 10, whatever. But again, when that interior of the offensive line's a little shaky, like it might be this season, can Jared Goff still execute and run this offense like he has done the last 2 years? I think he can, but I don't think it's a given. Now, he still has extremely good weapons around him. First, in the backfield with Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery, the best running back duo in the league. Jahmyr Gibbs had 1,400 yards, 16 touchdowns just on the ground, but he also added 504 in the air. David Montgomery, not really a receiving back, he's more of a physical running back. They work perfectly with each other. Jahmyr Gibbs, I mean, the Sonic and Knuckles nickname is perfect with Jahmyr and Montgomery. Montgomery also added, they had 28 rushing touchdowns as a running back duo. And if you throw in all touchdowns, they had 32 scrimmage touchdowns, just the two of them. So you're obviously set there, and that helps Goff out tremendously again. Can they do the same thing with the O-line? I think they can, because they're that good. And the pass catchers Jared Goff has, first of all, at tight end, you got Sam Laporta, one of the better tight ends in the league. Not quite. Now, he had a very good rookie year, and not quite as good of a year 2, but it was still good. He still had 700 yards and 7 touchdowns. He wasn't bad at all last year. He just wasn't as good as he was his rookie year. So if he can go right back to where he left off his rookie year, now in year 3, perfect. You got Brock Wright, who I think is a solid backup tight end. He gave it 2 touchdowns last year. And then the receivers. You know what you got in Amon-Ra St. Brown, one of the better slot receivers in football, the most reliable receiver in football. Like, I don't even know if Amon-Ra St. Brown drops passes, it feels like. It feels like he never drops a pass. He probably does. He probably has. But it just doesn't feel like it. He'll get open, and you know you can just throw him the ball. And then next to him, you got Jameson Williams, who had a very good third year. Again, he hasn't played a ton with, that suspension he had. He only played 15 games last year, but he was very good. I said that a lot, but he had 1,007. And then outside of that, it's a little bit of a who knows. Tim Patrick's a solid veteran third receiver. Didn't play. I mean, he got 40 targets last year, had almost 400 yards, 3 touchdowns. So he's not a bad receiver 3 by any means. You got, of course, Isaac Tesla, your third-round pick. Khalif Raymond is a solid veteran reliable receiver. It's not a bad receiver. You have your star guy in Amon-Ra. You have your very good receiver 2 in Jameson Williams. You have your young guys in Isaac Tesla, even Dominic Lovett. And then you got your veterans in Khalif Raymond and Tim Patrick, who you can rely on. It's a good receiver room, very good tight end, elite backfield, elite running backs, a very good quarterback that can execute a really good offense very well, and an O-line that has really good pieces and some questionable pieces. I don't know if this offense is going to be the number one scoring offense like they were last year. I do think it will take a step down without Ben Johnson and with some of that O-line losses that they had. But there's just way too much talent for it to be a bad O-line or bad offense. So I still think they'll have a top 10 offense easily, but I just don't think they'll be the best offense in the league. Now, their defense, I think, will improve. All the injuries they had to their defense last year, I mean, look at all the names in red. I'm pretty sure the names in red on the ourlads.com website are players that are going to the year injured or whatever. There's already a lot of guys that are just going into this year injured. They had all those injuries, and yet they were still the 7th best scoring defense. Now in yards, they were 20th. Don't know it, so you can say whatever you want about that, but it was a very shaky defense for the Lions because of how many injuries they sustained. When I was looking at like all the defensive players that had stats last year for the Lions, I'm looking at Pro Football Reference. Now there's some offensive players from like tackles and stuff, but there's 50 plus players that recorded a defensive stat for the Lions last year, I'm pretty sure. That's a lot. So they had so many injuries to deal with, and now that they're healthy, they had an injury-riddled defense and still put up the 7th best scoring defense. So I think while their offense may take a slight downturn, again, slight, I think they'll still be a top 10 offense, maybe even top 5. I think their defense will improve. So I think those two will balance each other out, and I'll still think they'll have a very good season. First of all, on the D-line, you have Aiden Hutchinson, who's coming back from injury. And yes, it was a very bad injury. But in 5 games last year, he had 7.5 sacks. He had 4.5 in the game versus Tampa, I'm pretty sure. And in his 39 games he's played so far in his career, he's had 28.5 sacks. And I have full faith that he'll be right back to normal going into this year. Now, alongside him, you have your other edge rusher, Marcus Davenport. Davenport, another guy who hasn't really been fully healthy the last 2 years, but in 4 games in 2023, he had 2 sacks, and at one point in one season, like 2-3 years ago, when he only played 10 games, he had 9 sacks. So despite not having a lot of games played some seasons, he can still get a lot of sacks for the games he plays. And he also gets a lot of pressures too. So I think he can be a nice complementary piece next to Aiden Hutchinson, again, if he's healthy. Now on the interior of that D-line, you have Alim McNeill, who he's still only 24, and while he doesn't necessarily stuff the stat sheet for how good he actually is, he has really good like advanced stats like pressures and hurries and all that type of stuff. And I think he should get better. Now, he might miss the start of the next season. I think an injury he had last year. But once he's back, him, Hutchinson, Davenport, they also have DJ Reader, who's a solid veteran guy who, while you may not want him to be your best interior D lineman, while Alim McNeill is hurt, you're okay with DJ Reader being your number one interior D lineman while you wait for a guy like Alim McNeill to be healthy. And while Alim McNeill is missing in some games potentially to start the season, you can have your first-round pick, Tyleik Williams, play next to DJ Reader in that starting role, and Reader can be a nice overall, not just for that short stint that McNeill might miss, but overall Reader and even McNeill can be a nice mentor for a guy like Tyleik Williams. So that's why I like the Tyleik Williams pick in the first round, because not only can he be a long-term answer that Reader necessarily isn't, but he can be a nice filler alongside Reader while McNeill gets healthy, because he might miss some of the beginning of the season. Now, looking at some of the guys on alongside that front 7 at the linebacker position, probably one of the better linebacker rooms in football. The linebacker trio of Anzalone, Campbell, and Derek Barnes is very good. Derek Barnes was hurt most of last year, but in 2023 he had over 80 tackles. He's overall a very secure tackler, solid in pass coverage, and hopefully a healthy 2025 season happens for Derek Barnes. Then next to him, you got Alex Anzalone as your will linebacker, sort of. Another guy that was a little hurt last year again. This whole Lions team was injured. But in 2023 and 2022, he really had some good years. Gets good pressure for a off-ball coverage linebacker. He's good in the pass. He's good in the run. The only thing he could maybe improve on is becoming a more secure tackler. But it's not like he's just missing tackles left and right. He's still a good tackler and a good player. And then Jack Campbell, probably the best linebacker on the team, one of the better linebackers in the league. Very good rookie year for Jack Campbell in 2023, and an even better year too. 130-plus tackles. Got a little bit of pressure on the quarterback as well. Maybe not quite like Alex Anzalone, but still a little bit of pressure. And while he's not necessarily the best in pass coverage, he's not bad by any means, and he's only 2 years in, so he easily can improve, especially as a pass defender or in pass coverage. But the trio of Anzalone, Campbell, and Barnes is very good. And another guy, Malcolm Rodriguez, their 6th-round pick from 2022, had a very good rookie year in 2022, but's been a little banged up, a little up and down, and was out and is out for the start of this year. But when he comes back, I expect him to get some reps potentially and make an impact. And another guy, Trevor Nowaski, didn't play a ton last year, undrafted free agent from 2023. But in the little bit of opportunities he had last year, he showed a little bit of potential. He had 2 sacks, got an interception. What does that mean? I don't know. But watch out for Trevor Nowaski, and don't be surprised if you hear that name more and more over the years. And then looking at the secondary, very good unit. Starting off with the safeties, probably just like they have the best running back duo, they probably have the best safety duo in the league with Brian Branch and Kirby Joseph. 2 top 10 safeties, or arguable top 10 safeties. Brian Branch is one of the better, if not the best, run defending safeties in the league. He can also play nickel for you too. Doesn't really need to, but he can line up there as well. He's good in coverage, over 100 tackles last year. He can get very good pressure on the quarterback. Again, can line up as nickel as well. Had 7 interceptions in his first 2 seasons with a ton of PBUs, pass deflections, whatever. Again, only 23 years old. And then you have Kirby Joseph, who's only 24 years old. Elite in pass coverage, one of the better safeties in pass coverage. Led the league with 9 interceptions last year, gets a ton of pass deflections, held quarterbacks to super low passer ratings and completion percentages, and also very good in the run game. And again, he also had over 80 tackles in all of his first 3 seasons in the league and was an All-Pro last year. So you have Brian Branch, who's one of the better run-defending safeties and good in pass coverage, and you have Kirby Joseph, who is one of the better safeties in pass coverage, who is also good in the run. So again, very good safety duo, the best in the league. Now, the corners are a little questionable, mainly because there's a lot of youth at that corner room. Again, you have DJ Reed, who's a solid corner, and you're happy to have him as that reliable, steady corner. Now, outside of him, you have Terrion Arnold, who had a solid rookie year with lots of promise and potential. You like what you saw to Arnold and what he can become. Amik Robinson, again, he's more of a veteran corner. Overall, a solid corner who can be pretty good in the run game and solid to okay in the pass. And I'm not too familiar with their other guys. Avonte Maddox is, a veteran. Rocky Sin has played on a few teams. But again, their defense overall was 7th in scoring last year with all the injuries they had, and now they're fully healthy and basically running it back because they just swapped out DJ Reed with they basically swapped out Carlton Davis with DJ Reed and added Tyleik Williams. That's pretty much it. It's the same defense, just healthy and slightly improved. So I think their defense will be better, slightly better, and I think their offense may get a little worse in terms of just like overall points scored, whatever. So I think that will even each other out, and again, I think they'll have a pretty good year. A unit that they are very good at is special teams. Jack Fox is one of the better punters in the league. Jake Bates had a very good rookie year, and Khalif Raymond was an all-pro punt returner. So not only does that mean he's a very good punt returner, but he's also probably a pretty decent kick returner. So the Lions probably have one of the better special team units in the league as well. Now, before we get into the Lions' floor, ceiling, and prediction for this season, if you're enjoying this video so far, make sure to leave a like and subscribe. Helps the channel out a ton. But now, going into the Lions' schedule prediction, they have the 3rd hardest schedule in the league. Again, they play the NFC North. They played the NFC North twice. Then they played the AFC North. And they also have a first place schedule, which means they have to play the Buccaneers. They have to play the Chiefs. They have to play the Rams. They also have to play the NFC East, which is one of the better divisions. It's a brutal schedule. And I don't think the wins will quite be there for the Lions. I still think they'll make the playoffs, have a double-digit win season, and have, once again, another opportunity to make a playoff run. I just don't think the regular season wins will be as high as they had, especially last year where they had, I think, 14 wins. It's just because the schedule is very difficult and, again, some of the losses they had. Again, I think for the floor, I think they can get 2 division wins, maybe even 3 at worst, right? I think they could beat the Giants. I think they could beat the Browns. I think then that puts their floor at 5 wins. I think they can then get a game versus maybe a team like Pittsburgh, a team like Cincinnati, maybe another division game, and I'll have their floor. My floor for the Lions is 7-10. 7-10 floor. I don't see them having 6 or less wins. Now, their ceiling, I do think it can be very high because, again, if the O-line isn't as bad as maybe we think, if the coaching changes or coaching losses aren't as bad as they think, and or they brought in good replacements, maybe all these things that we're worrying about the Lions are overblown, and they're going to have another really good regular season. So I do think their ceiling can be around 13 wins. Again, I think let me quickly check. But I think they had 14 last year. They had 15 wins last year. Apologies. So again, all these, I could be overanalyzing all these changes they made, and they're just going to be a really good team once again. But I'm just a little skeptical, and also factoring in the brutal schedule they have. The Browns and Giants are the only, like, quote-unquote bad teams they play. The Packers, I think outside of the Giants and Browns, every team on their schedule could make the playoffs. And that's obviously insane. So I think I'm just going to be a little safe on the Lions prediction and put their record at 10-7. Again, I know it's a 5-win decrease, but I don't think the regular season matters. I think they're going to, regardless, get the amount of wins they need to make the playoffs, and it's just about getting it done in the playoffs, getting back to the NFC Championship and actually getting the job done. That will conclude my quick little season preview for the 2025 season for the Detroit Lions. In the comment section, let me know some of your thoughts on the Lions for this upcoming season. And also, again, if you enjoyed this video, make sure to leave a like, subscribe, and in the comment section, there will be a link to the playlist of all the other previews we've done so far. And I'll see you guys next time. Peace.